I'm thinking about the challenge that people offer, it's a question really. Can God make a rock so big that he can't lift it? Now, folks think this is a clever challenge against God. It's meant to really challenge the character of God, at least from the Christian perspective, that God is omnipotent. And then they give you what really amounts to a pseudo-challenge or a pseudo-question. I'll explain why in a minute. To demonstrate that some characteristic that seems to be necessary of God is contradictory, and therefore that God can't exist. The problem with question, and there's lots of different ways, or there are a couple different ways to respond to this, but let me just give you one to think about. The problem with this particular challenge is that it is a pseudo-question because it treats God as if he were two instead of one. Think about this. If I said, is Bill stronger than Bob? We pit Bill against Bob, and there might be a contest, and one could be stronger than the other. You have a winner and a loser. But what if I asked, can God beat himself in an arm wrestling match? Well, I mean, that's kind of an odd question, because if he could arm wrestle with himself and he beat himself, then he would be both the winner and the loser at the same time. In order to make these kind of comparisons, you have to have two separate individuals. You can't make the comparison within an individual, because this question, can God create a rock so large that he can't lift it, is kind of like, can God win an arm wrestling match with himself? It's a nonsense question, because God is one and not two. It's basically asking, can God pit one aspect of his ability against another aspect of ability? And this guarantees that he's both winner and loser at the same time, which again is just nonsense. This trades, by the way, on a confusion about the omnipotence of God. It's a confusion that a lot of Christians have as well. They think omnipotence means that God can do anything. There is not anything that is outside of God's capability. But the scripture says God cannot lie. We know that God cannot sin. We know that God, being the ground of existence, can't cease to exist. And so that's a misconstrual of omnipotence. Omnipotence, potence being power, means that God is capable of doing anything that power can accomplish. But power can't accomplish making square circles. It's a logical absurdity, and since reason and logic are grounded in God's character, God is not going to be able to do something inconsistent with his own character. And so the key to answering questions like this is first to get the definition of omnipotence right. God can do anything power can do, because he is not limited in power. And secondly, realizing that this kind of challenge is just an incoherent challenge, because it is demanding that God do something that is contradictory to his nature, or internally contradictory. And because God can't do that, there is no limitation on God whatsoever.